Hello and welcome to Divisive Issues, the foul-mouthed, spoiler-filled comic book podcast where two comic fans and two non-comic fans talk about controversial comic books and comic book history. I'm Sly.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Darryl. Wait, or am I Phil? Or am I Ryan? I'm having
an identity crisis?
Dun, dun, dun.
So, to intro this, we should have the segue that led to this.
We already introed this. I'm having an identity crisis. Guys, seriously, help me.
Deadly Secrets, Private Hells.
So
Comics event of the year begins here.
To segue from our last episode, this one, we were talking about, the comics are so dark now. That's why Alan Moore sucks. Fuck him. He did all these things I don't like. Al Ryan was like, I don't like the cynicism. I don't like the rape. I don't like comics making Batman into an asshole. I don't like. I like heroes making something to aspire to. And then simultaneously, he holds that opinion and then goes to say, "This is one of my favorite comics."
Didn't say it was one of my favorite comics.
In the past, I'm pretty sure he said it was one of your favorite comics.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay,
I bet at some point you have. In the past, I feel like everything's been your favorite.
Yes, and also, even if you don't say this is your favorite comic, you always say this era that this led to, this very dark, cynical era, is one of your favorite eras of comics too. So,
that is actually true.
Yes, so Ryan is a massive hypocrite. And you were all right to shun him in the comments of our last episode for hating Alan Moore because he likes everything Alan Moore has done in terms of affecting the universe after all.
Okay.
Also, fuck you, Ryan, but I also like this.
This book is good.
Hey,
this book is good.
I really did enjoy this. And we'll get into like the pros and cons. We're doing a deep dive. This is going to be a two-parter because we have a lot to discuss with this.
So to clarify, I just want to clarify. We made a point last episode, and now we're going to completely undermine it by showing how good Alan Moore's changes made the DC universe. And Ryan's
we weren't like all set on that though.
Yeah. Me and Phil aren't going to be the hypocrites here. We're going to be like, this is what Alan Moore has done, has paved the correct road.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, this is more.
I'm saying Ryan's a hypocrite. Ryan is a monster.
I'm a piece of shit.
Right.
So
you're a piece of shit.
This is a doozy of a book that actually has been on our list to cover since like when we were planning the initial stages of the podcast.
Yes.
And I knew nothing about it going in. Like, usually I at least have some, other than like really old stuff, but I feel like some of the stuff in the 2000s I at least know of or have heard recommended. Or maybe I'm getting all my crises confused, and maybe I was recommended this, but I think of like Infinite Crisis on Infinite
This is
Earths.
an interesting event because so we're doing Identity Crisis from 2004, written by Brad Meltzer and drawn by Rags Morales. And it's a 7-issue miniseries that is like hailed as like an event comic, but it is
an event comic, but it's not like a typical event comic with big explosions, monster invading the city.
There's no like big bad that everyone has to get together and face.
There is.
again.
It's Dr. Light.
I call it a quieter event because it's not like every character's status quo shifts and like Superman dies and like it's more.
It is an event in that a lot of mandates are put into it. Like this character has to die.
That's true.
So
but it's more focused on the smaller characters, and the way the bigger characters factor in are more tertiary or like lore based than I think.
Yeah.
Like when you look at like right after this was Infinite Crisis, which is a story about like Superman fighting other Supermen.
Wait, Infinite Crisis is different than Crisis on Infinite Earths?
Yes.
God damn it!
Phil, the adjective goes before the crisis.
In defense of that, Infinite Crisis is a sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Okay. When you said, "Oh, we're gonna do Identity Crisis," I thought Infinite Crisis. I thought they were the same thing, and now I'm like, there are 3 things that I've heard that are all not the same thing.
And so the Final Crisis, and Zero Hour was called A Crisis in Time, and all this other shit.
This is why comics are kind of a bit impenetrable when you're trying to like, if you want to get into lore, unless you already have like a thirst for that.
There's nothing I hate more. The nothing I hate more, and I always bitch to Ryan. Ryan thinks it's not a big deal, and I always say, fuck you, it's a big deal. We're using titles too often and making it confusing where to start.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair.
Are all the crises DC?
Yes. The Crisis is DC's thing. That's why Identity Crisis has nothing to do with other crises. That's why it's stupid to call this in the first place.
Yes.
It's doing it just because to be like, it's a new event, Identity Crisis, but it has nothing to do with the other crises at all. It's just for that's what I mean. Like they use it just for name recognition, but it has nothing to tie into the other. Just confusing for sake of confusion.
And one of the things I want to point out too about this story is just like when we talked about way back when Civil War is often viewed, either Civil War or Avengers Disassembled, as like the start of like modern Marvel, where it's like the event heavy kind of like new status quo's jump on point era. And I feel like Identity Crisis is the beginning of the like bigger universe, more cohesive DC universe that also is more convoluted, because the more cohesive it is, the more things cross over and the more of a mess it is. But this is kind of like...
This was a jumping on point for a lot of people for the 2000s era.
And one of the things that I want to say about the story is, to me, I feel like this Marvelized the universe a little bit more, where it has a focus on making the characters more unique and human than just the Superman and Batman and Flash and Green Lantern are all these strong-jawed...
So we should clarify, because you always say that that this is where Marvelization happens. We should clarify like how big that is, because we always like the cliche is Marvel is guys trying to be gods, and DC is gods trying to be guys, basically.
Yeah.
Trying to be human.
And that's not to say that DC hasn't had relatable characters. Like in here, we have Wally West as Flash and Kyle Rayner as Green Lantern.
That's clarification I want to make, because in the 90s is when they started introducing new heroes that are more relatable. Or they started like in the 80s too. 80s and 90s started introducing new heroes that are relatable, and as we saw in Return of Superman and Death of Superman 2, the stories got dark, but the classic heroes were still like shiny beacons of heroism in those stories. Like Superman does not go through much selling of his character in that story arc.
Mm-hmm. Not like at all. Superman is untarnished. If anything, he's like elevated. Via his death.
Yeah, and this was the new method in the 90s was to introduce new heroes like Superboy and Kyle Rayner that would be the more relatable characters. But this was the first time that now they're like, no, now even the characters you thought were clandestine, now they have flaws too.
Yeah, and even though like we had a lot of those relatable characters, I feel like this is one of the first stories that tried to make the universe like that. Where
the universe, that's why I disagree on that, because the 90s got really dark in a lot of weird ways. Like Coast City got fucking obliterated. How Jordan became Parallax. He tried to fucking.
But what I mean, not that this like pushed the universe in that direction. What I mean is like the characters until this point, with the exception of like Just League International, which is a whole side thing. But I just want to put that caveat before everyone asks me, because it's my favorite. But for the most part, the universe didn't have characters using each other's first names. It was always Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. You didn't have a lot of like characters that seemed like they had friendships and weren't just team-ups. You know what I mean?
There were exceptions, like Green Arrow and Green Lantern, but this was when it became the norm that everyone...
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. So it marvelized the universe in a way that made it feel more lived in as a whole, instead of having lived in corners in this big archetypical
like they were
universe.
Friends and not work associates.
Yes, exactly.
It was kind of weird reading this, because the entire time like they mostly refer to each other by their first name on this stuff, and I completely I have never heard Superman referred to as Clark by someone other than his parents.
But that's right. They do a lot. Like if you read a lot of modern comics, they do it all the time. I actually love that. Like that's one change I really love that's delivered. I love. Especially in the moments of extreme duress and stuff like that, they're always it's more it's like Superman. Don't worry about your dad's death. It's more emotional to be like, Clark, it's okay. Like I'm here for you or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
Also more normal, because it's like if this is actually your friend, you would call them by their name.
What are you talking about, teaching man?
Yeah, like Phil and I aren't like Mr. So and So outside
Mr.
of
Tutor and the teaching man.
Yeah, but and we're obviously when I say that I really like this book, there's obviously going to be some asterisks to that, and anyone who's familiar with the book can probably guess why it's super controversial and why we want to cover it. Mm-hmm. And
we should clarify that one reason we want to cover it is because I hated it, and Joe and Ryan loved it, and they wanted to have this so they could dunk on me and show me how wrong I was, which may
Unlike
happen.
Sly, I don't like to have episodes just to make fun of my friends, but if the shoe fits, might as well.
It's interesting that you hated it, because I feel like reading this, there's so many parts of it that aim for that. Like, I would term it by ambition. Like, when I was reading this, I'm like, clearly this writer wants to tell a story about family with this mode of storytelling. Like, what he's doing here at the plot.
Yeah.
Well, my problem with it at the time was related to the Simpsons argument we had before. Mm-hmm. But the reason why I warmed up a little bit on it now is because, especially in hindsight, I can see more of the good qualities.
Especially now that we've read so much Mark Millar, it's like
I can't call it bad, but like even for like this is better than any Marvel event I've ever read in my life. So that has to say something.
And one other because it's a two-parter, we can go into a little more detail. I do want to talk about the creative team a little bit, because with Brad Meltzer, he was a crime author, and I've never read any of his prose, but he was not a comic book writer, and then he came into DC to write this event, and one thing that I find very interesting is, I didn't know that at the time when I first read it, and usually when they hire a non-comic book writer to come shake up the universe, they, like, completely throw away continuity, and they're like, we're gonna do, I'm gonna do whatever I want.
Well, now, when they were doing this
Yeah.
initiative in the 2000s, they had like Joss Whedon and Orson Scott Card and other people write for the comics, but they were like writers that were comic book fans. Like Brad Meltzer said he loved the Silver, which is funny because he really twists a lot of things in Silver Age around. But he says
Also, for the record, he twists the Bronze Age. Satellite era is the Bronze,
Bronze Age. But he says he's in love with he specifically said Silver Age himself. So he said he loved the Silver Age.
Fucking hack, doesn't know the lore.
Yeah, and he said it's funny because he said, but it's funny because it's one of those instances in comics that are very common where he basically grew up with the comics and everyone said those are dumb comics where nothing matters, just people punch each other. You're dumb for liking them, you fucking nerd. And then when he grew up, he's like, I'll show them, I'll make them dark and edgy, and I'll show them that Superman and fucking Batman are cool. Look how fucking serious this comic is. But like Brad Meltzer was a fan of these characters growing up. And
That's definitely like just like a premature correlation between like violence and maturity. I know I had that correlation like growing up as a teenager.
But there's like Brad Meltzer is one of the examples of wanting to darken up the universe to make it more adult, so people that grew up with it will now appreciate the darker turn kind of thing.
Yeah, but he does throw in a lot of continuity, like a lot more than I would expect for this like new mystery writer coming into the comic scene.
Probably a bit too much than it needs.
Okay,
in some cases.
that's
I thought there were a lot of characters in this, like I do with every event we read, but I didn't think they like clogged the plot. Like they were used in a way that I didn't think bothered me, even though I didn't know most of them.
I think the actual cast is very focused. Like there's a very central cast. Most of the other ones I have to know is whatever they say about them. Like, hey, that's the guy who does this, and that's the guy who does that. Like,
see, I'm trying to think about it because it does have a lot of instances where there are single panels where it just says, and here's this guy. I'm trying to think how that's different from something where you have Cry for Justice where and maybe it's because in that it treats them disrespectfully by like just killing them off.
But Cry for Justice, they went into their history for no reason, and then they just announced they died off panel or something like that. Like here, the Calculator, all you have to know, like there's a guy called the Calculator. He's like a computer guy. All you have to know he's a computer guy, and now he's like the waypoint for all the other villains in the story. Like you don't have to know. I don't know anything about the Calculator. I literally don't know anything about the Calculator. I got the gist of his
I'm thinking more stuff where they like show like the other teams fighting against villains, or they show like the villain headquarters.
I thought that was cool because it's like this. What it does is gives you a sense of scale, because like this event is so big that every hero is like up in arms over this, and then you see all these characters that like I didn't think, oh, I don't know this guy, so this sucks. I'm like, it looks like every DC hero in the goddamn world is trying to find this thing.
And the characters that matter in the plot, they do some narration where they're like, this is his wife, or this is, they were partners, or like I feel like they do give you some of it, but it was very hard for me to read this from that perspective, because when I read it I was already pretty entrenched in the DC universe, so I'm definitely curious as we go through it how you guys feel about it.
I also when I read it the first time much younger, I felt it was very followable, and I never really had, but in general I never had the problem that Darryl was like, I need to know how everyone is their backstory before I get into a story. Like I can.
It's followable, but it's interrupted by like, here's this guy, just real quick. Anyway, back to the story. Oh, here's this guy, real quick.
That's what I mean. I say there's some continuity, there's too much continuity in certain spots, because there's a few times where they pause the story just to give continuity. Like a certain scene of Hal Jordan we'll get into later, I feel like they could have cut.
I'm also a person, when I'm reading a book, if there's a word I don't know, I look it up in a dictionary.
Yeah, so I think that's maybe Darryl.
Yeah.
And lastly, the penciler, Rags Morales. He is somebody that I feel like gets dumped on a lot for his work. And there are a couple panels that maybe stand out as kind of quirky or not perfect, but I actually think this is the most I've ever liked Rags' art, and I think he's a really good fit for this book. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I thought it was a good fit too. It's one of those where it's like I wasn't like really into reading it just for his art. I was kind of by like issue 3, I think I was really into the plot and the writing, but like it was serviceable.
It is very typical
maybe.
2000s DC art, which is why I've always kind of underrated Rags Morales. I do think he's a very competent artist, but it was one of those things where, I might as well get to a little bit because we were talking about modern comics. With modern comics, the coloring I feel like always overshadows the ink work. At least this era where it's a heavy gradients, a lot of different stray colors. When there's a red, it's a pure red. There is no a color palette. Like when Flash shows up, they use the same uniform red. Like it's like in animation they have like this is this character's red. That's his trademark red. That's kind of what kind of art coloring they did back then in this era. And I feel like it makes the coloring the coloring is very involved while also being very lifeless because it uses such a flat coloring method. Like if you learn about heavy coloring, you don't use like a flat red. If it's like a sunny scene, you use a very reddish orange, or like if you want to make a very bright scene, maybe use a pink that's closer to red. Like or if it's night scene, use a purple that's closer to red. But you never use a pure red. Like that's like one of the first things you learn when you try to make like dynamic coloring. But this is like when they're trying to. This is when they're still using like uniform set colors for every character. Like Superman always has the same blue. Green Arrow always has the same green. If you look at every single fucking panel, it's always the same fucking green. But the coloring is getting more involved while it's still being dull in how it's presented.
But like during like night scenes, I think they have.
Yeah, night scenes are the one exception, but that's pretty much the only two modes: day and night. Those are the only two.
Okay.
Flash becomes purple at night, but that's the only change really.
Purple.
Okay, so now I'm ready to get into it. The elevator pitch for this book, like the overall outline, is that all the heroes are brought together because their significant others, like their wives and parents and so on and so forth, are being threatened or hunted or even killed by some mystery villain, and that's the big mystery, is like we have to stop it before other people get killed. And while that's going on, we get to learn some hidden retcon secrets from the past. That's pretty much the outline of the whole mystery.
I think that if you find the idea of somehow there's a villain going around killing the spouses and loved ones of superheroes kind of interesting, like me, I think you should try and read this book before you just hear it spoiled.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the way I did not see the twist at the end coming at all.
Yes.
I actually didn't like the ending, but I like the rest of it.
Yeah, I don't like the ending either, but we'll get into that.
Yeah. We'll get into it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, one thing I just want to warn is that because the mystery is people hunting hero spouses, there is a lot of violence and sexual violence against women in this book. So just be warned about that going forward.
It's like one's very specific.
It is.
Yeah, but it's a pretty specific scene.
Yeah.
No,
God,
and there's
we'll
more anti-woman tropes. There are many narrators in this story, and a lot of bad things happen to the woman in this story, but there are no woman narrators in the story whatsoever. There's like 6 narrators, there's no woman narrators. So
yeah, that is really interesting. I wonder, because they could have done it, because there's a whole bunch of
There's a lot of women characters too. Yeah,
but all the men are important, and all bad stuff happens to the women.
Yeah, so that's where the asterisk comes
Which again, it's like the unfortunate thing when it's like all of your big brand superheroes, other than like Wonder Woman, are
men.
But this
men.
is about focusing on the
straight men.
lesser known characters, and a woman character is one of the central plot points. Like
Yeah.
like multiple women characters. Like this plot couldn't happen without the women characters at all. Like even like the most powerful woman on the team, she has the most impact on the actual plot events, but she does not. You never see what her.
Yeah, that's an interesting leaving her out by omission, instead focusing more on like I guess
Green Arrow. How does Green Arrow feel about her actions?
So just keep that in mind going forward. So
Yeah. So I'm gonna just quickly run through the most important cast, so we can like have that out of the way. Mm-hmm. So this is about like mostly about a set Justice League team from the 70s. The most important ones are Green Arrow, who you probably know a little bit, but if you don't know him in the comics, he's like always been the more morally and like I'm willing to do what's necessary kind of guy. Like he's one of the few superheroes willing to kill. He killed Prometheus because fuck Prometheus.
yeah.
It's also interesting because he's painted it in a way that where it is like that vigilante, but it's not like edgy. I wouldn't say like he's not like Punisher, where it's like, well, you need to kill them to keep them down. Instead, he's like, I'm trying to be like on the good side of history at all times, even if it means I do bad things.
Zatanna, who is the character that we were referring to that does a lot of important things but never actually says much.
No, she says "idabudaboo."
She speaks backwards and activates magic spells. Like if she says the word backwards, the thing she says backwards happens. It's a really
So if she says pots, everyone stops.
Yeah. Pots.
It's so dumb because like I'm like that. You have actually one of the most powerful powers in like this universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it seems weird that she's not like a
like
one of
next to Superman.
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't she just free Superman?
Yeah, Batman is considered a legend, and she's not, according to this book.
Yeah, it's insane. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah,
And
so-
she says a thing and freezes people, but Batman knows how to beat her though, so screw her.
Does he though?
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he just like shines a laser in her eye and she can't say anything because it hurts.
We have the Atom, who is one of Ryan's favorite characters. Who can shrink
He's a
down.
scientist who shrinks.
And we have Wally West, Ryan's favorite Flash, who was like son of the Flash everyone knows, Barry, who's in the movies and the TV shows. Not his son, he's this nephew, and he becomes Barry's successor after Barry dies in the continuity. We have Kyle, which talked about the Green episodes after the original. The most prominent Green Lantern, the one played by Ryan Reynolds, went crazy. He became Green Lantern.
Oh, and Birdman.
Hawkman doesn't really do much. I'm not gonna get into him.
Hawkman.
No, I feel like Hawkman actually contributes
Yeah.
more than Kyle does.
I do too.
He does, but I bring up Kyle. I bring up Kyle mostly because of he's like the audience vessel along with Wally. But he is needless. Like Kyle could be cut from the story about, and we actually it would make a key scene much better actually. But
Hawkman's just like a guy dressed like a hawk that's really militaristic.
yes, he was like a alien general. Elongated Man, he's a stretchy guy who's a detective, and his
You
wife.
mean Mr. Fantastic?
Like Ryan always likes to mention, DC wanted to make Plastic Man, but they didn't realize they already had the rights to Plastic Man, so they made Elongated Man. And now they have both of them, Plastic Man and Elongated Man.
Also, fuck you, Phil. Elongated Man came out first.
Who's Elastic Man? Did I make that up? Is that not a
Plastic Man.
Plastic Man. I think he made a Plastic Man.
Okay.
I wasn't saying that he ripped off Mr. Fantastic, just that so many of these characters have analogs.
Yes.
Like when you like Shrinking Scientist, I just always think Hank Pym, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's
Again,
the
all these
first
DC
Shrinking
characters
Man.
came first. Jeez.
Yeah.
Fucking Marvel Zombies over here.
Yeah. But Elongated Man, his nose wiggles when he senses a crime going on, and he goes and becomes a detective. That's what makes him different from Plastic Man. Plastic Man is more goofy, Elongated Man is more of a detective.
And also, Elongated Man, and his like whole shtick has always been like him and his wife go across the country. His wife Sue solving mysteries together. They're like a fun, like
Oh,
that's
so they
like
used to be a thing before this.
they've been a thing
It
since,
wasn't
like,
just
the
like
60s.
fridging her for fun. Kind
No,
of.
she was
Here's
actually
my wife. Now she's dead.
And she was a symbol of like her and like the comics that they were part of were symbolic of the fun, carefree DC era. So of course it had to be ruined with the story.
Yeah.
So what else? We have Boomerang. If you know from Suicide Squad, he throws boomerangs at people. And you might like say he's a joke villain, but that's the point. And that's part of his purpose here. He's a joke villain that no one takes seriously.
Yeah, and he's desperate. Yeah.
Dr. Light is another joke villain. He has light powers.
He trapped the atom in a light bulb once.
So that gets into why he's considered a joke. Tim Drake,
Robin.
third Robin after Jason Todd died.
So basically, the only thing that matters is this is a Robin whose dad is alive and he lives with his dad, and his dad
Yeah.
knows he's Robin.
And it was very important that his dad was alive because he was the first Robin to have like a family outside of Batman.
Yeah,
And-
which I was surprised when I was reading this. I'm like, I thought Batman just goes and picks up like orphans all the
yes,
time.
and
You're next.
Tim Drake was.
You're
That's
up.
why Tim Drake was such an important character that he was an exception to that role. Like he became Robin out of his own volition, and he forced himself basically on Batman because he felt Batman needed somebody, a psychic to back him up because Batman was going basically insane, fighting on his own, fighting crime every night on his own, and getting edgier and edgier. And he said, "You need a psychic somebody to watch your back that you can rely on. I want to be your Robin." Like he basically, and through his detective skills, he deduced that Bruce Wayne was Batman. Basically,
None of this is
He
important.
blackmailed Batman?
yeah, he didn't blackmail him, but he like, kept saying he basically kept forcing it upon himself. Like the Robin in Dark Knight Rises is closer to Tim Drake in personality than Dick Grayson.
Tim Drake has always been an exceptionally independent character relative to other Robins.
Yeah. So story opens up.
Wait,
with
who's
Elongated Man,
Superman?
Oh, and Superman. and
Oh,
Batman.
somebody explain Superman. He came from Krypton. So, it opens up with Elongated Man talking like he's on stakeout, looking after this villain called Bolt. He uses guns apparently. His name is Bolt, but he uses guns.
Even I don't know half these fucking characters.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a character I believe that's made just for the story. It's just a random like fire-based flying woman.
Oh, the woman that's on the stakeout with him?
Yeah, I assume she's made for this story because she quits after all the shit that happens in the story. Because women can't handle the business, am I right, guys? But basically, and she starts talking with Elongated Man on the stakeout, watching Bolt.
No, she was a character for 20 years.
Oh, she was?
Yeah, I was gonna say like that all these other characters he brings in, but then he's like, I need this random woman to be
I assume all these characters are like established characters.
This is Firebird, do not steal. She has fire hair.
Fire
It'd
Hawk.
be even funnier that if she's an established character because she quits immediately after Meltzer gets her hand on her.
Nothing will
also-
be the same after Identity Crisis. Firehawk will no longer be around.
And so they're talking, and she asks him about his wife, and he's like, of course, typical female. Oh, he's asking about my wife. No, but more friendly than that. He's just like, oh, only the woman always asking about my wife. And he talks about how the cute relationship is.
And this is an established thing. Every year she fakes a mystery and he solves it, and then
Yeah.
that like leads to his
For his
gift.
birthday.
Yeah.
Elongated Man's wife is the one that keeps putting up fake mysteries for him because it's like a fun gag to do.
Yeah.
And
And that's an
it's cute.
established thing. They've been doing that for decades. Like in
that's
the
a really
Oh,
comics.
okay. Oh, that is cute then.
Yeah.
They included that, or starts on that.
And one funny joke I should mention, it's not important to the plot, but Superman is with his parents, and his mom is like trying to pay for his parents' subscription, and Clark's like, I know, I'll take care of it, Mom. And she's like, I bet Batman does this to his parents, and Clark just makes a face like, oh my god. Which I thought was funny.
Mom, how could you?
Because she doesn't know, right?
Yeah, I know, that's why it's funny. The audience knows, but the characters don't.
Yeah.
And Green Arrow is with his son.
Yeah, we get like a montage of a lot of characters.
Yeah, the family. That's what I'm
Yeah,
going into
with their
this. It's good.
families. While
Which
we
is
get
important.
like
Or
a
their
really-
dead families, like Nightwing is hanging out at the headstone of his
family.
mom
Yeah.
and dad. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and while we're getting that, we're getting a narration of Elongated Man talking about how much he loves his wife, how like they met at a party, he was on a team up with the Flash, and she noticed Ralph, the Elongated Man, instead of the Flash, and like she's
Yeah,
the
it
only
shows
person
everyone
who-
else looking at the Flash at the party, and then he's alone, but then she's looking at him.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
she
I
gotta-
says like she picked me. That's the most important thing about her. She picked me
Yeah.
above everyone else.
I gotta say how funny some of these scenes look. Like when everyone's looking at Flash, Sue is looking at Ralph, and his neck is just stretched out like a giraffe. Like
I
looking
always
at,
love the stretchy guys. Like
they look so silly.
They do. And that's what's funny about the movies. The movies haven't yet to nail the stretchy guys. They always look silly, even in the movies.
Yeah.
But-
I mean, they look silly in the comics
Yeah.
too.
I know, but I mean, like that's one thing. Like the movies, for the most part, have made the powers somewhat believable, but the stretchy powers always look silly, like comic booky, even despite all the special effects they put into them and stuff like
Well,
that.
that's one of the reasons why I like characters like the Elongated Man, because he's goofy by definition.
Yeah.
That like when he's like stretching around and like twitching his nose because he smells a mystery, like I feel like it lends itself more to a goofy power than like when you look at Fan Four Stick, that's like, look at how serious we're all freaks,
Yes.
and then he's stretching around.
That's
Yeah.
one example of how it doesn't work well for serious tone.
Yeah.
And so Sue actually knows that Ralph figured out that she's gonna have a mystery for him, and she surely knows like what she's gonna get for his birthday and all this stuff. But he's like, I guess the other thing I put into this present box. But with all this happy imagery, it has to go bad because this is a DC comic in the 2000s. And so
Who's this Punisher guy?
That's
Bolt?
That's Bolt.
He's just some villain. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
It's like when he's a teleporter, which it does spend like a kind of surprisingly long amount of time. At first,
elongated amount of time.
I guess it's to establish who the calculator is.
Yeah,
that
so
he's-
like I said, Calculator is the hub for the other villains.
He's villain Oracle, as they say.
Yes, because Oracle was what's her face, Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, after she got crippled by Joker and Killing Joke, and she became like the hub for all the superheroes. And a Calculator was like, we should have different villains, and that is plot relevant. We'll get into.
Yeah.
Takeout goes bad because Bolt starts getting shot up by the people he's dealing with. But as this is happening, Sue Didn't gets attacked. She calls for Ralph to help her, and so Firehawk flies him back. He sees Sue's burned out corpse, and she also sees that she was pregnant, and it was a pregnancy test inside the box.
Yeah, that was the other present he wasn't gonna expect, is that she's pregnant. And we should specify, at least for like plot relevancy's sake, that it shows there's like a panel of Sue falling down with blood coming out of her nose.
Yes.
And then there's a person in shadow pointing a gun at Sue, saying goodbye to Sue, and then they burn half of Sue's body.
I think
Yeah.
they burned the entire body, but the art makes it look like she's wearing a shirt for some reason. Because
It really only half of her gets burned because they keep showing like her half face is fine, her half
It's
of her
hard to
leg
tell
is
because
fine.
it's hard to tell because it's hard to tell if her lower half is just censored for the sake of like comic censorship or if
Well,
she's wearing
also
a-
by the time we see her body, Ralph is stretched like completely like wrapped around her, and
Yeah.
the sprinklers are going off, and he's like almost like the artifact is he's almost like melting, like
Yeah.
he's like losing control of his body. So
Yeah.
like I think the panel is intentionally like obtuse.
yeah, abstract. In that
I'm
sense.
saying like later on when they show her.
Oh, they show her more. Okay, so
Yeah, her cadaver.
Darryl's getting that detail right for me because I'm fucking it up. And so we see like the other heroes like noticing like, oh, I have to love my loved one more after what happened to Sue. And while this is happening, Ray goes to meet his ex-wife.
So the Atom is meeting with his ex-wife, and she's, they're like friendly for the first time in a long time.
And they're actually signing papers about like that she was granted half of his assets, and she's signing back his inventions to him.
Yeah, and that's when Ray finds out that Sue's dead. Green Arrow shows up, and that's when we get Green Arrow's narration, and he's talking about how now they're having every single superhero from the world like investigating this area,
I really liked this. How they had like whatever power they could do, they did it. Like Adam was going through the fibers of the carpet because he could pick them up, and like I don't know any of these fucking heroes, but it's like it makes sense.
Two
when
metal
you have,
bros, they're just big and metal.
It makes sense when you have such
Animal
a diverse...
Man is there sniffing everything.
When you have such a diverse set of powers, like you can really do some crazy forensics work. Like this guy's using like mother box technology.
This guy? That's Mr. Miracle.
Mr. Miracle.
Whatever.
We read a comic with him, remember?
Did we? I don't remember.
Funky Flash Man?
Oh.
Yeah.
But it's important to clarify this because this mystery cheats, and this is one of the details where it cheats, where they're like, we can't find any trace of anything, no scent, no debris on the carpet.
This is one of the reasons I didn't like the ending again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. The ending.
Oh yeah,
It's such a cool idea.
And that's why it builds up the mystery so well, because what has happened is
it's a closed door mystery. Like how did
and they also say that every superhero, every like league member's house, if they request it, can be reinforced with Kryptonian, apocalyptic, or all these like crazy alien technology, so that if someone phases through the walls, the alarms go off. If someone teleports in, the alarms go off. If like all these things that like would make it impossible for a regular person to break in, so you're like, who the fuck could have done this?
Yeah.
It's a great
We'll
premise.
get to that, I think, next episode when we talk about the end.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
We'll say that. So they have the funeral, and they have a lot of nice details at the funeral. They're forced to wear their costumes because it'd be hard to keep them like this private.
Because Ralph was public with his identity.
Yeah.
So if a bunch of regular people are there, like, why would Bruce Wayne be there? Why would Clark Kent be there? You know, so they are kind of forced to stay in their costumes. And I like this because for any, like, if you were a new reader and you looked at this funeral, you wouldn't recognize anyone if they weren't in costume. Like, there would be no clues at all. But they address, like, why this looks dumb. It's because, like, they have to.
I recognize Jim Gordon there, bucko.
I like how there's two cops like at the church, like just in case anything goes wrong, you know. Like it's not like you have every superhero.
So, and there's Dicey Toe, I think I was touching. Wonder Woman gives a speech, and Green Arrow is like monologuing in his mind while it's happening. I even listen to the speech. But he starts paying attention when the end his voice breaks, and she goes to the casket saying goodbye, sister. I thought, and then it's Ralph's turn to speak, and he can't even do it. He just breaks down crying.
It's such a sad page. Like he's silent for the first 30 seconds, and then you see people crying, and each hero is trying to encourage him, like, "Come on, you can do it. Be strong." And he starts crying.
He's also at the same time he's trying to make sure that he doesn't like go loopy, because apparently he has to focus on his form being solid. Which is another like sad thing.
He can't do it. Yeah, and then the last panel is him crying, saying, "I can't. I'm sorry." And he's like melting.
Yeah. And
it's really sad.
Yeah, and it ends with the select team we mentioned before: Zatanna, Hawkman,
Adam, Canary, Zatanna, and Green Arrow.
And Black Canary didn't mention. Black Canary. All you have to know about her is she has a sonic scream. She also doesn't have too much.
Everyone else, basically every DC superhero ever, splits up into teams to go after. I think that they're thinking it has to be a teleporter, so they're going after all the different
not
teleporters.
just a teleporter, but since she was burned, they're like, obviously it's a fire villain. So a whole bunch of people go after the different fire villains, and it like lists out all their stupid names. And then the other ones go after teleporters because they're trying to get any information they can.
But this team goes to Ralph, and Ralph's like, we know who did it. We have to go after Dr. Light, and to be continued.
And this was when I was like, am I supposed to know him? Like,
it's Dr. Wiley's enemy, Dr. Light.
I didn't know Dr. Light when I first read this either.
Me neither.
But the thing that, like, the first, like, this is one of the few reveals that I feel like is not explained at all. But, like, right away. But they do go into pretty massive detail about who Dr. Light is.
Yeah, they explained more about him in this following issue. But even then, it's weird as a cliffhanger being like, we need to go after Dr. Light, which is like...
it would have been more powerful.
Big? Is he small? Is he important? Is he not? Is he
especially because Dr. Light like wasn't like an A-list villain at this point either. Like he was like nobody.
It would have been more powerful of him being like, I know who did it. We all know who did it. We have to go after him right now. Like that would have been a more powerful ending. Like if the three, like this group knows.
But then the next issue starts with the reveal that it's Dr. Light, and I would have been like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
So issue 2 begins with the Atom describing basically everything that's happened and that he's with his wife and he's giving her like a crossbow. Ex-wife, excuse me.
Yes.
To protect herself because like part of the story delves into the fact that now all these like the superheroes don't feel they have to protect their spouses in some way and their family.
Yeah. And throughout these issues, like it's revealed that Jean, the wife, broke up with the ex-wife broke up with Ray, but as like all the heroes are bonding more with each other, they're all getting closer back with like the families they lost touch with. So even like Jean and Ray are becoming closer together throughout this process.
Yeah.
And then it cuts back to like the Green Arrow and with elastic damn it, elongated
Just say Ralph.
Yeah. And Hawkeye spots it, Flash is there, just
Hawkman.
Hawkeye, or Hawkman.
He spots it. Flash is there, like listening in on them. I guess running.
I
around
love how
really fast.
Flash just runs back and forth so fast that he's
Or
invisible. Is that a
vibrating.
thing?
Yeah.
Because
And then,
he moves fast enough. He can move the speed of fucking light, I believe. So.
Yeah. And then Green Lantern's also there, invisible, listening in. But Green Arrow just like he knows. He's like, who else would be here?
He's like, Kyle, I see you there. He's like, how'd you see me? And he's like, I didn't.
Good guess.
Like we mentioned before, Kyle is mostly superfluous. He's there just because he's tag team buddies with Wally. But Wally is the really important one because he grew up with Wally as Barry as his icon. So he looks up to all these characters.
And just as a little comic fan note, I do really like that it was always where like Green Lantern was the really assertive one and the Flash was like the nice one in the background. And here the roles are reversed and they specify that where like Kyle is just like Barry Allen was and Wally's so much like Hal. And like that's just like a nice touch where it's like it's the same team up, but because it's the modern age, the roles are reversed.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, you're lying. So you've been like, what are you guys doing here? You think we didn't notice that you're the only ones who didn't get a villain to go after?
Some of the biggest Justice League members all decided we're not going to be... Ralph said, I'm not going to be part of a team looking for this.
Yeah, well, he's understandable since he's grieving.
Yeah, I guess Ralph is understandable. But like Ralph's closest friends all decide we're not going to go look for it.
Yeah. And so Wally's like, so what's happening? What are you guys doing? It's like, okay, we got to tell you about Dr. Light. And Ralph is the one that explains this story. And it's basically up on the space station. Everyone else was doing superhero stuff, and Sue was alone on the space station. And somehow Dr. Light got aboard, and he basically sees Sue, and he's like, "Nice to see you, Sue, Susie Q." And he just decides that he wants to rape her.
Yep.
So
and he does. He does decide. He rapes her.
Yeah, like is he established as like not being all there or something? Because he seems like not just like a regular guy who's like, "Hey, I'm a villain."
We should get to the backstory about Brad Meltzer a little bit more too, because Brad Meltzer was a huge Teen Titans fan too. But Teen Titans turned Dr. Light used to be a big Justice League villain. Then when he became a Teen Titans villain, he was treated more as a joke, like he downgraded.
Yeah.
And so this story was Brad Meltzer's way to explain why Dr. Light turned from a Justice League villain to a Teen Titans villain.
Yeah, because early Justice League has a lot of villains, none of which really like stick at all, because they're all like kind of lame. And then, like, so some of them, like Dr. Light, then became a Teen Titans villain. He gets bounced around a lot. And, like, he was, like, a joke. So this is, like, I guess an explanation on why he's a joke.
But this is so weird because this is, like, so much darker of, like, a path. Like, usually you don't think of, like, comic book villains as, like, as rapists when they're being taken seriously. You're like, oh, these guys are threatening people.
Yeah, that's the thing is like he in this. It's not even just the fact that he came up here and just immediately is like Susie Q and rapes her, which is like already like sociopathic. But then as they all find him there doing that and they're beating the shit out of him, he's like laughing and being like, "Yeah, I'll find all your wives. I'm gonna rape all of them.
And I'll rape them all."
Yeah, it's like no, really, it's really crazy. Like he seems like a rabid animal.
Yeah, this character was a megalomaniac, like Doctor Doom as villain. Then he became a joke villain. Then he became a rapist.
Yeah. And part of why this is bad is that since I'm writing a story that involves some degree of sexual violence, is you have to think, if you want to use this kind of thing, you have to think why you're doing it, and you have to be very careful with doing it. Where it's like, this adds nothing. He could just be a guy that comes in here and wants to torment her or try and kill her to get back at, like, all the superheroes he hates. It's like, this degree, it's like, a lot of times you misinterpret that, like, hey, this adds more maturity because it's like really bad guys would try and do this, but it also like it's a very uncomfortable thing to try and like both draw and narrate.
They're just trying to be like he's more like they're trying to make him be as bad as possible. I think
So they retconned Sue got raped into her backstory after she died, and now that it was a retcon, we never got to see how she dealt with this matter.
Yeah.
It's just to add on to her being
that
a victim.
too. It's like that would be more interesting if you try to tackle that subject, because then you could say it had more of a purpose later on. But here it's just that it adds, like, it dumps on this woman that's already dead that was a beloved character.
And that's why, like, this is the biggest asterisk on when I'm like, I like this book a lot, but this is fucking terrible.
Yeah, it's unnecessary.
And I think the reason why is because, so they decide as a group, well, first Hawkman's like, we have to do something about this because he's gonna come after us. He has, like, he knows, you know, he knows how to get here,
and he even says, like, I'm just gonna look her up in the address book, like, and like as he's chained up here, he keeps saying, like, Flash, I see a wedding ring under your costume. You have someone at home too. Like, he's seriously, like, crazy.
Yeah, and he's chained up, like he's gonna get his ass kicked, and he's like, I know it, but I gotta at least threaten their wives.
Yeah, so they decide as a group, and they get into more detail about who decides what and how everyone votes and everything, that they are not just going to mind wipe him, but they're going to go in magically through Zatanna's powers and alter his personality.
They're going to, like magic lobotomy him.
Yeah, and they revealed that Zatanna mind wiped a lot of villains, and that's how, because it's kind of an interesting explanation, because with the DC Universe, with magicians and stuff like that, it is very easy to figure out superheroes' identities.
And also, like, in the 60s, characters, like, mind-wiped characters all the time. Like, Professor X would mind-wipe, like, every X-Men villain, like, every issue.
Yeah.
It also makes sense if you're, like, so against killing these goddamn deranged people.
Yeah, and
like, at least make them forget.
Yeah. It's going to be really hard to help him. Like, and it's really dangerous. It's like, if we can't get rid of his powers, why not just make him not bad?
Yeah, and, like, I think the reason why he went for the rape is because he wanted something that was, like, so bad that could make the heroes want to lobotomize somebody.
Yes,
But, like, there are way less problematic ways to do that.
Also, there's, like, mass murderers that they don't do this to.
Well, then, part of the big reveal here that they say is, Green Arrow says, oh, you think we just did this to Dr. Light? And that does spill out into other books, like Flash at the time, like there's a Flash villain that they did this to, like, et cetera, et cetera. That's part of, like, the tie-in. It's an event that changes everything kind of comic book thing.
Coincidentally, this all happens at the same time. Like, all this comes back, like, it's through 20 years, this was, like, ironclad secret. All of a sudden, this comes back in with this one week span.
Yeah.
So, Green Arrow explains this to Wally in between scenes of basically they're watching out over Dr. Light's, like, apartment.
Yeah, so basically the way the calculator has all the villains set up, the villain hub thing, and they get hired out for jobs in this location. And Dr. Light comes in because somehow he knows already that the Justice League is after him, so maybe other teams are after him, I guess. So he runs to this villain hub and says, "I need to hire somebody to save my life in the Justice League." And
It's weird to me that this villain satellite exists. Like, why doesn't, like, Superman just come over and, like, zap it?
Well, they say, like, Batman's specifically, or maybe not Batman, but Oracle's listening in to all this stuff, and they know
keeping
she's
tabs.
listening.
Yeah.
But they also know that they know that she's being listened. Like, the Justice League knows that they are onto them and that they can just say whatever they want still.
I think it's this idea that maybe it's better to have them all in one place that you know you can storm rather than having these guys split up. Possibly.
Like, they keep some tabs of them. Like, they keep tabs on who's being hired for what that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could also just, again, be like another complete oversight type of deal.
I think it's just one of those comic book things. It's like, oh, this used to be the Legion of Doom's headquarters.
Yeah,
so, like,
or it's
whatever,
like,
I
oh,
guess.
it's cool that all these villains are here, like Boomerang and Monocle and Sam.
But I think this does play a huge part. Like, we're brushing over it, but this does play like a continuous role in the story. So it is weird to not focus enough to explain that.
But I think, like, see, like, as a comic book fan, I was just like, villain hideout, and I don't think twice about it.
Yeah. I was like, it's like it's floating above the planet, like near. Don't the Justice League have a floating base too?
Yeah. Space is big, Phil. They're not going to run into each other.
I bet it's on the complete opposite side of Earth, so they can't see each other.
Yeah. Who's that? Oh. So, Dr. Light needs the help from someone, and so who does he get the help of as the Justice League breaks down the door to go get him? They got the help he got the help of Deathstroke, which when I saw this, I'm like, this is just a dude with swords.
Yes.
Like why would you not
Yes.
get the guy that can like see the future and then have him help you?
So
Run away.
Deathstroke is a weird character because he's like, I guess because he's so popular because like the Teen Titans show and like because he's like always been like the Teen Titans main nemesis.
Yeah.
They make him out and this isn't just in this story. This story might be the most egregious example.
It
but
is.
they make him out like he's this like powerhouse that can stop anybody.
Yeah.
But he's really like, I get why he's a villain for like teenagers or like even like Batman, but like he can't fight Superman.
It's like to stop the Avengers, you bring in Wolverine. It's like, no, even if he's popular
Yeah.
and cool.
I thought he was like Prometheus or Nemesis.
He's
or
not.
Like,
That's why.
didn't he have like? He doesn't have a computer brain?
No, it's not
He doesn't have
that
anything.
brain,
He's
it's
just
that
a guy.
Instead of using 10% of our brain, he uses 90% of our brain, which is definitely a real thing, and not just a thing that pop culture makes up.
But to clarify, so I guess that's why I brought up Brad to be a Teen Titans fanboy, because not only did he want to fix Dr. Light, he also wanted to elevate Deathstroke, because Deathstroke was a Teen Titans villain, and now he's a Justice League villain. He can take on Justice League. He's so fucking badass.
Makes a lot more sense.
First of all, like the Teen Titans were able to like fight off Deathstroke even like in their earliest appearance when they're still like scrubs. Like Deathstroke had to work to beat them with planning and months of preparation.
And then I was seeing this, it's like you're fighting the Flash and a woman that can make you disappear by saying the words backwards, and Green Lantern. I'm like, this is already like, you're way out of your league, buddy.
So just before we get to the fight, I just want to specify, after Deathstroke shows up, the only other thing that happens in this issue is Dr. Midnight, who's doing the autopsy on Sue Dibney, reveals that it wasn't the fire that killed her. She was already dead from some other thing,
And
so
the
it
fire
wasn't
was
Dr.
covered.
you're right,
up.
dead. She was killed by Fist of North Star.
So now, back
now
to the fight.
right before the fight, we're like going into this fight knowing as the reader that they're wasting their time because Dr. Light didn't do this.
Yeah, it's good.
But we get to see a cool fight.
Yeah, so this fight actually I both love and hate. See, when I thought he had a computer brain and was super fast, I'm like, that's kind of cool because he plans for everything, but knowing that he's just a regular guy.
Hey, I thought you didn't like Prometheus even with that excuse.
I usually it's the way it's done here for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's not just like he wins. They show how he planned for every single one of their powers.
Yeah, every page is like a person.
Yeah. And it's still really dumb because
it's dumb because like even if he plans like when he beat Flash when he was a Teen Titans, remember Wally was this is Wally that was a Teen Titan. Like Wally couldn't go the speed of sound, and like here he just stabs Wally. Like,
yeah, that's the thing. So he
sticks
Deathstroke,
out his knife so the Flash runs into it.
Yeah, he puts his sword behind him because he's like, I can't outrun him, so I'll just predict where he's gonna go. Which, okay, if he was going like a bit faster than you, maybe. But when someone's going like, I don't think the writer realizes like the speed of light is so much faster than
there's the C4 explosions to delay him by nanoseconds, so he has the time.
not even like seriously like. It is such an
One of the
exponential
confusing things
amount.
I was thinking of is like, how did this guy know all of these people be here and to fight them, or was this all like impromptu stuff planning? Where it's like,
I mean,
okay,
that's the thing. Like, this is the like edgelordiest fight where it's just like he's so cool that he knows everything and he has counters for everybody right away.
Yeah,
and like they even say like he has such good vision that he could use a laser pointer to defeat the Atom when he's microscopic.
Yeah. So this is why I was like, he has a computer brain. That makes sense.
And Hawkman's flying, and the two of them charge at each other, and Green Arrow's like narrating it, and he says. Hawkman is a trained warrior, like he was the fucking general of like a conquering alien force, but he doesn't expect anyone going for his chest area and cutting off his fucking wings. No warrior will be prepared for a chest attack. He gets like knowing the most vital parts of your body.
What's extra dumb too is like he thinks of ways to fight all their powers, but they also let him do the classic like martial arts thing where they only fight him one by one. It's like if any of them fought at the same time, they would use their powers and he would just lose.
What like it is that Green Lantern goes last, and it's like he waits a long time. He waits for like 6 heroes to go down, and then he's like, "Now I'll come at you with my fists." It's like, come on, Kyle.
And like if this was Hal, I would believe it because Hal's a dumbass and he's just so fucking time. But this is Kyle. Kyle's whole character is that he's the manager of one. He makes fucking like race cars and trains come after villains and stuff like that.
Yeah,
he will not do this. And to make it even dumber, on top of Kyle waiting for everyone else to be beaten and coming after him in melee combat, Now, it turns out that if you grab a Lantern's fist and think really hard, you can overpower his ring.
Which I was like getting.
For the record, Hal Jordan got his ring stolen by a hobo who had just as much willpower as him.
I love
So
comics.
see, Brad Meltzer's bringing the canon. He knows the fucking.
Yeah.
Oh, and if you're wondering how the magician lady got beat, she got punched in the stomach in such a precise way,
liver.
that she
And
vomits.
again, this happens after Deathstroke beats up Flash. So if she just said you stop existing while you're fighting the Flash, he'll be done ready. And if
Well, I again, this is why I was like, he must have super speed too, because it's so quick. He goes from stabbing the Flash to hitting her in the liver to slicing open Birdman or Hawkman.
yeah, and then
Hawkman,
cutting
like,
off green arrows.
It's so quick that I'm like, he must have super speed and super strength or something.
I was gonna say, after all this stuff, just like Prometheus, their one weakness is a green arrow to the face.
and not just that, but then once he gets the arrow in the eye, they all are just like, we don't have our powers. He countered all of them, but what we can do is just grab him and punch him. And
So
they all jump on
that's
him.
the thing I want to specify is that, yes, this fight is complete bullshit, but after, like, he still loses.
He
Like,
still loses, yeah.
If he beat them all and then, like, was just like, see you later, assholes, I feel like it would be more inexcusable, but this seems to me like a lot of just, like, fan service, action, like, bullshit, because this is one of the big fights in the book.
Yeah, but it eats up a lot of space.
It eats up a lot, but then, like, he does lose.
I still think it's dumb though that he lose. Like
I
it's
do
like
still
what
think it's
Sly
dumb,
said.
don't
where
get me wrong.
He did not expect Green Arrow to use an arrow and put it in his head. I'm like, what?
It's just not
Whereas
well written on any level.
At least you establish Prometheus is like he's so smart, like he can't ever be beaten, even though he's beaten the exact same way.
Also, all these parallels to Cry for Justice, this came out years before Cry for Justice.
Cry for Justice.
It's really interesting.
I said to Darryl that this Cry for Justice owes existence to this
Yeah,
book.
definitely.
Yeah,
100%
this
like
really
this fight.
is just like kind of better Cry for Justice.
Yeah.
But so the way the fight resolves though is they're all beating up Deathstroke, and Dr. Light sees it, and it's like almost an exact parallel.
Okay, so
of
here's what
them
to explain.
beating up
'Cause it's
him.
hard to explain because it's so weird, but I have to explain because it's so weird. He sees Deathstroke being ganged up on by the villains, so he flashes back to when he was ganged up on
The
the villains.
heroes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. So he sees
all
Deathstroke. He sees Deathstroke being ganged up by the heroes. So he sees himself being
From
ganged
my
up by
point
the
of view,
heroes.
the Jedi are evil.
Yeah.
Here's why it's weird.
Dr. Light wouldn't see this.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's third
The one
person.
getting
It's
ganged
like
up
third person. He's seeing himself in Deathstroke place. That's why it's extra dumb because it would make more sense of getting up on Doctor Light to stop him, and he remembers, wow, this is just like that time that happened before. And it is canon that it's third person because later on it's revealed that he goes crazy and blinds them all, and reveals he gives them a vision of this scene from the third person into their eyeballs, and it becomes critical because this is how they find out that Batman was part of that fight.
Yeah.
See,
It's very
I'm
strange.
I'm less upset about the weird third person stuff and more that they're in the exact same positions as
Yeah,
they
it's-
were
well,
before. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
too much of a coincidence.
There are
Yeah.
multiple, and this is the first time in like 20 years he fought them. Like there's 20 layers of dumbness.
Yeah. This is definitely like this whole issue is so obnoxious because it has like, well, I guess the last issue had all the problematic stuff, and then this issue has all like the really dumb comic booky stuff. So like maybe we're through the worst of it, guys.
I actually, it's like one of those things that I thought, again, some of the panels in the fight are cool, and even the idea of everyone jumping on him and like bringing him down, because like presumably they're trying not to kill this guy. So if someone's like flailing and really strong, like you sometimes need like 5-6 people to just hold
Yeah,
them.
I think you've always shown like a preference towards because what was it? It was that Green Lantern story we read.
The last Phil in Testament of Hal Jordan where Green Lantern beats up the entire Justice League.
Yeah, where it's like Phil was really enjoying that. It's cool to see what the writers do to negate everyone's powers or how they handle like the one versus many fights.
This is the scene that I always refer to as the writer playing with his favorite action figures, because like obviously this writer loves Deathstroke a lot and wants to see how cool it would be for Deathstroke to beat everybody. And it really has that vibe of like almost like the opening scenes of Toy Story where it's like this big dramatic thing and then it like falls apart and you just zoom out and it's just a bunch of toys on the ground.
Yeah, it is like it is at its very core just too stupid, because like the Flash could have just been inside the house, killed Deathstroke, and taken Dr. Light before anyone thought that something was wrong.
Yeah.
Like so on that.
But it's always
with
there's always
it's
that like weird level of suspension of disbelief that you have to have with people that move faster than anyone in the world. Where it's like you see that in anime too, where when villains start talking, it's like the fastest person can just go over and kill them instantly before the villain even recognizes they're moving.
I think it's because like they're always like, oh, speed of sound, speed of light, but like I feel like they don't have a conception of how much faster that is than actual running. Yeah. Like it's not like you're faster.
And we talked about this. I talked about this with Phil about super speed would be hell in real life. Mm-hmm. So I surmise that it would probably more like an activated ability. So you're not experiencing.
But even so, he could activate it before they get there.
The Flash was running towards Deathstroke when he knifed him. So
yeah.
Like if he was cheap shotting that's why his defeats in like the Teen Titans made sense, because a lot of times he cheap shotted the times when he least expected it. Like he ambushed Robin and characters like that.
It's because the way they write it is always like you're like driving a really fast car or something, but it's like no, you're so fast that he could walk over there, have it like make a cup of coffee in the house, come out, and then kick Deathstroke in the ass before that blade even got like. Before he even took it out of the sheet.
Before he took a breath. This is why it's more useful to have speedsters be like novices with their powers. That they don't know how to use it.
Quicksilver is just like fast. He's not.
Yeah, or you have them be just fast instead of like superhumanly fast, like before
speed
photons
of light is
move.
so fast.
Or you just do like what a lot of comic books do, where it's just like there's this bullshit reason why it negates the powers, so that a bunch of nerds don't have to argue about it for an hour. Even if it's bullshit, you're just like, yeah, I guess. You know.
Or don't make them that fast.
But just to make the scene again, just to make it clear. So they see Blacklight sees Deathstroke being grabbed on by all the heroes. So he flashes back to the night he rapes Sudibni, and he sees he imagines himself being grabbed by the heroes.
And he
Batman
screams, "You took my mind," because he's he remembers being lobotomized. And
so he goes from being so dumb he can't even do anything right to being pissed off. And then in this heatest moment, he blinds all the heroes, and they're incapacitated, and he runs at this moment. Like, he doesn't attack them while they're unconscious or anything. He runs away. And it's not until Superman shows up later that they come back to their senses, the Justice League.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Superman shows up, and he's like, what the hell were you guys doing? Why are you going after Dr. Light? And
Wally does the neat thing where he takes the blame for it, saying like Ralph had a run-in with Dr. Light a few years back, so we were just gonna go after him since it was Green Arrow's and Ralph's plan, and that it would be best for like Ralph to be the one to sock him in the face.
Yeah, they say like, you know, even Superman has to understand that, you know, if Lois was the one who died, like he would want to go after him personally, so he shouldn't be too upset. And then they're like, well, Superman's like, you know, it couldn't be Dr. Light, right? You saw the autopsy thing. And they're like, oh, shit, so we have to figure out who it is. And then they start to talk about...
and I like this, too, because...
So
Green Arrow's talking to Flash.
There's so many
and
fucking
Green Arrow's like, I really appreciate you not, like, snitching on us. And Wally's like, I didn't do it for you. Yeah. He's like, I didn't do it for you. I did it out of respect to Barry and Hal. I want the whole story before you, like, garnish their legacy. You know, trash the legacy of the guy who murdered everyone and tried to reboot the universe. But that's besides the point. But yeah, he's saying, like, and he basically says, like, I want the whole story right now. Otherwise, I'm going to call Batman right now and find out what the deal is, because I saw Batman was there and you didn't say he was there the first time.
And so now Green Arrow starts narrating a flashback to when Wizard switched bodies with the Justice League, which is like
it's a quick scene. Strong. It's a quick scene where it's just like Silver Age campy story where the villains and the heroes switch bodies, which happened in the 60s like all the time.
And they're basically saying like some of these villains were so crazy, like they did shit like this, and we just buried a father who I don't know who this is.
That's Black Canary's dad had just died.
A mother, I don't know who that is.
Zatanna's mom had just died.
And then
Barry's wife had just died.
Yeah, Barry's
and this is kind of like a critique on like when comics started getting more mature in the 70s, where like they start killing characters, but you still also have the campy villains and stories like that. How do you rectify those two worlds that you're telling?
And how do you see your friends and family getting killed and not kill or do something to these villains? Like,
so that's the justification on why they started lobotomizing.
So they start saying like,
and
like,
we should. It's an important point that they all when they explained the flashbacks, they weren't unanimous. They were divided, and Barry was the deciding vote because of Iris's death 6 months prior. Yeah,
so they were split 3-3. Barry's the deciding vote, and they try to lobotomize Dr. Light. I actually liked, real quick, before they leave, like, he's like, how did like Superman and Bruce not know? And Green Arrow says, people aren't stupid. They believe what they want to believe and they hear what they want to hear. And you see Superman's ear, like, not picking this up or not letting himself or something.
No, he's definitely picking it up. He's just not, like,
he's like ignoring.
Yeah.
Yeah, like basically, like, how does Superman not know about this? Because we should explain this. It was basically a league within the league because it was Superman, Batman, like the heavy hitters. Then it was the C-listers that like the mainstream doesn't know about, and basically Batman and Superman were around so rarely that the league within the league usually had to make decisions unilaterally, and they had to be the ones to clean up. And basically, a division happened where they had to do all the dirty work, like not the dirty work, like the busy work, like making sure the villains get sent to prison and all that stuff, while Batman and Superman just popped in just for the glory moments and left after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so they were lobotomizing these guys.
And one of my favorite lines in this whole book is when they're arguing back and forth. And historically, Hawkman has always been the like real conservative militaristic guy, and Green Arrow has always been the like liberal, anti-capitalist, like loudmouth. Mm-hmm. And basically, once they started making this regular, Green Arrow was like, I have a problem with this, and we can't just keep altering people's personalities. And he said, that was the end. I threw the first punch, and he punches Hawkman. And he says, Hawkman was kind enough to let it end at that. And Flash says, wait, so that's what you've been fighting about all these years? It wasn't politics? And Ali says, no, you're not listening. It's always been politics. And I really like this idea that these like gods that like choose to lobotomize people and they can erase minds and go with super speed, that their argument about politics is, should you use your powers to like lobotomize and mind wipe people? Because like I feel like that is, especially like in today's climate when we're like, it's just politics when we talk about like human nature and decency and like
morality essentially.
Yeah. And like I find that to be I really like the way the politics of this argument play out between the different personalities.
Which is, it's right around like here where I was getting pretty interested in the story, not just for the mystery. It's like I really like this struggle with what do you do about these dangerous people. You know, I've always talked about that, like that kind of stuff. Like you wouldn't let the Joker live. He's such an asshole.
Someone like the Wizard who can take Superman's body and go in it. Yeah, like he could just destroy the world.
It's like a national security.
Yeah, and that's the thing. As we, me, comic book writer from the 70s, as comics left the Silver Age, you still had these characters that had these godlike powers, but you were trying to tell more nuanced stories, and there were a lot of growing pains, as we've talked about extensively on the show. In that
this comic represents a lot of growing pains.
Yes.
Yeah, and it represents a lot of that, and it's also like trying to do like a postmodern analysis of how those stories can make sense. If you're talking about like the history of Batman, the 70s still happened, but not for Superman. How does that work? And this kind of tries to draw the line on filling those gaps on how the Silver Age still is canon, but is more mature than we were pretending it was.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to finish off this issue, there's Boomerang's going to try to see his son that he's never met before.
Yeah, and he's just this totally washed up Flash villain that like nobody can even hire. He's just like this like out of shape bald mess that's just like pitiful.
He wants to meet his son,
and then Tim Drake is with his dad, and his dad's worried about him, and he's worried about his dad.
And we should point out, like you say that it's like, oh, they're worried about him or they meet up, but these are like pretty well written scenes about these people caring about each other type of deal.
They're not just to get the point across. They all actually have character moments within them.
Totally. They're actually really,
where it's like dad checks out his eye because he got elbowed by Cyborg, and he can notice that like he put makeup on over his eye that he thought was good enough to fool Alfred, but it couldn't fool his dad. So then his dad gets ice, and then he's like he has his hands over the counter because he's clearly just like very troubled by the fact that his son's going out and risking his life every night. Like no
and on the TV it says important is are those close to the League safe? So obviously Tim's hearing this thinking like my dad might not be safe, you know.
Yeah. And the thing that I really like about these moments, too, is whenever we see the, like, Jimmy Olsen's or Perry White's or, like, Tim Drake's dad, like, they're always seeing all these events totally secondhand. So, like, they're watching it at home on the news or they're looking at photos of it. And, like, that kind of thing, it shows how detached they are. And just, like, that same kind of, especially, like, this is, like, a pretty soon, like, this is, like, a post-9/11 kind of book where it's just, like, there's fear around every corner for these characters that don't have any agency in the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the end of the issue where we're gonna end this episode, Ivy Town, Jean,
divorcee,
and she's saying please don't, and there's a shattered coffee mug, a phone through the wall,
somebody tying her from behind.
Yeah, oh no, and then she's getting hanged on the door with a blindfold on, a gag in her mouth, and she's calling
Ray asking for his help.
Yeah, she's calling the Atom, her ex-husband, please save me.
Yeah,
and
that ends chapter 3, serial killer.
So, Next time on Divisive Issues, we will learn the identity of the killer. We will learn more secrets about who got mind wiped.
We'll still argue more about that Deathstroke fight.
All that and more next time on Divisive Issues.
Yeah, so we will pick it up from here in 2 weeks. I know we went into a little bit more behind the scenes comics LOL nonsense here, but a story like this I think kind of needs it. So thank you.
This is an event. We gotta
treat
treat it like an event, like it's worthy. This is like
yeah.
Yeah.
You have to read all these tie-ins, which is just the first 20 minutes of this episode to be able to follow it. And so we'll pick it up there. In the meantime, check out the rest of the shows at the Flying Machine Network, flyingmachine.network. Like Stranger Still, they just did a whole episode on panic attacks and some ways that some of the hosts and other people have helped alleviate them, both through like medication and therapy and like, you know, the science behind like mental tricks to help alleviate panic and anxiety. And it was a really great episode. So check that out and all the other shows and join our Discord and our Facebook group because, you know, tell us about the things you think about Identity Crisis, because I've never talked about this book without getting into an argument with somebody. So, yeah, and we'll finish it up next time.
So, thank you all for listening. It was revealed I got raped after I was murdered.
Jeez. I've been always arguing about politics.
I countered all of Sly's moves before he used them.
And I've been Plastic Man.
Stay in continuity.